Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on social inclusion in the construction industry. For the next hour and 15 minutes, we will talk about what it means, social inclusion in construction, by having three experts on the topic from three different European projects discussing some of the key findings on this topic and some tips on how to make this industry more inclusive. My name is Philo Tamis, and I'm the coordinator of the communication and dissemination activities of the InCUBE project, and I work for the organization New Energy Coalition, which is one of the partners of the InCUBE project. I will briefly introduce the speakers of today's webinar, but maybe a good thing to know for all of you is that if you have any questions to one of the speakers, please ask them in the chat. And at the end of the webinar, at around 4 o'clock, we'll have some time to answer, hopefully, a few of the questions you have. So today, we will have three different presentations. One from Harshita. She is a researcher at LAMA. LAMA is one of the partners of the InCUBE project. And she's researching the role of social inclusion in renovation project and construction. We have Patricia, who is a research scientist at BAUA, and she is representing the HumanTech project. And last but not least, we have Tony Phelan, a consultant, and he is showcasing some of the key results on the gender equality plan from the RoBetArme project. We will start with a brief introduction and also about what is the InCUBE project. I will do that since I'm also involved in the project, but later on, Patricia and Tony will briefly introduce their project, HumanTech and RoBetArme. I will introduce the topic of social inclusion in construction, followed by the presentation of Harshita of overcoming social barriers in construction. Then Patricia will give a presentation about the role of technology and how this can help creating individualization in this sector. And as a last presentation, we have Tony presenting some of the key results. So a brief presentation about what is InCUBE. InCUBE is a European project. It has been running for 2 years now. It will last for a total of 4 years. And InCUBE is focusing on developing an inclusive toolbox to accelerate deep renovation. A large portion of all the buildings in Europe still are not up to the standard of energy standards, so they still consume too much energy and they produce little to no energy at all. So this project is really trying to develop different tools to accelerate this process. We're not doing this alone. We're doing this in 3 different countries with 3 different pilot sites. One pilot in Groningen in the Netherlands, one in Trento, Italy, and one in Spain, Zaragoza. The aim of the project is to reduce waste streams, to make renovation processes more cheap, to reduce any hazardous work activities for workers on site, but also save energy, the building energy, so consume less energy as a building, and even try to produce energy through solar panels or heat districts, etc. Reduce CO2 emissions. And overall, the project aims to renovate buildings faster, cheaper, and in a more sustainable way. We do this by following 4 key pillars on industrialization, on digitalization, new technologies and materials. So we will also develop new technologies or maybe also new installation materials that are being tested in the project in the different pilots. And also we focus on developing new market entrants, so new business models, for instance, for this type of industry. For more information, I'd like to send you to our website, because today we will focus on social inclusion in renovation. So social inclusion, what is it and why is it important? Social inclusion, if you look up the definition, what does it mean? If you compare it to, or you take social inclusion and you look at the construction industry is often seen as a prominently male-dominated industry. However, what we try to do with social inclusion here is to see if we can make it more attractive for all types of people, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and be inclusive to everyone. So it's not a specific type of person that is able to work in construction. Having a diverse workforce also encourages, for instance, developing new innovative ideas. It also helps with teamwork. Having a diverse workforce, it increases different skills and experiences, unique talents. Everyone can contribute something to this topic, and also it helps with reducing economic disparities and supporting unrepresented groups. For instance, what I just tried to explain is try to be more inclusive so that the construction sector is open for everyone who is able to contribute to its objectives. And at the same time, it also, of course, is in line with any regulations on EU level on enhancing the reputation of this sector, also being more diverse. One of the topics, of course, is just an example, is for instance to involve more women in this sector, which can be done by through different technologies for different ways. For instance, digitalization is a big thing in construction. The comparison I just made, being a male-dominated industry, construction is not only heavy lifting, as a stereotypical thing that's being said often, but their digitalization is also a very important element here. For instance, robotization is an example of it. Is nowadays even robots are being used in demolishing of buildings, for instance, or also drilling holes in buildings. So controlling these robots is something that is like it's non-agnostic for what type of person does the job. So these are just some examples of that. Also, if you look at the industry sector, it's no surprise that, like a lot of other sectors, there's a lack of labor. So, of course, this is also very important that we widen our scope when it comes to attracting more labor into this sector and increasing the workforce capacity. A few nice examples, and after this I'd like to give the floor to the first speaker of today, Harshita. But these are 3 examples in Europe that there is already a changing industry perception on, for instance, having more women in the construction sector. For instance, in the Netherlands, there is a TV program that's called Vrouwen die Bouwen, and it focuses on women that work in construction. Besides that, there is also a European award on women in construction and engineering, for instance. And in Sweden, there's a foundation that focuses on young women that are working or want to work as an engineer. So it's good to see that there are some things already changing, but I think there's also still a lot that has to be improved. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Harshita to start with her story, and I will ask the other speakers to give the floor to her, including myself, and I will introduce myself back when Harshita has finished her story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Harshita, and I work on the InCUBE project. The organization that I represent today is called LAMA. So we are basically a social enterprise, and we are based in Florence, and we work primarily around the areas of social innovation and urban regeneration. And we specialize in a variety of services such as social innovation design, community engagement, monitoring and evaluation, communication strategy development. And within InCUBE project, our organization has kind of a transversal role. So ensuring that social sciences and humanities considerations are integrated into the project. And for this, we specifically lead a work package that focuses on social and gender considerations throughout the renovation process. And today, we will be mainly looking on two main topics. So we will be discussing InCUBE social inclusion framework and our approach to gender impact matrix. And before that, I will just give you a very quick overview of the 3 demo sites. So just to give you a little bit of context. So as Philo mentioned before, that we have 3 demo sites. So we are based in Italy, Spain, and Netherlands. And in Italy, we have the demo site in Trento. So it's a center for cultural and recreational activity, the building that is being renovated, and it will cater to startups, exhibitions, and cultural activities. So the end users there are basically office workers and casual visitors of the city. And then in Groningen, we have a residential building. So the primary end users there are the university students. While in Trento, we also have a residential building, but it houses around 40 low-income families with significant proportion of elderly population. So these sites are quite diverse in terms of the functions, in terms of the solutions that are being implemented, and also the challenges that they face. So starting with our first topic of social inclusion, so I would like to just give you an overview of what our objectives are within the project. So first of all, what social inclusion means for us is ensuring that all the actors that are engaged in the renovation process, so being it end users, being it construction workers or stakeholders, they are considered in the process. And our goal is to create these processes that are not only technically viable and sustainable, but also socially equitable. And one of the main outcomes or the objective is by improving the capabilities of InCUBE partners to kind of improve social aspects in such projects. So we have 3 key phases, let's say, for the project. So before, during, and after renovation. And before renovation, our key activities was basically to kind of research and analyze and kind of produce 3 sets of blueprints. So these blueprints are a set of recommendations or operational tips to address social inclusion. And then when during the renovation works, each demo site will kind of implement these tips. And after renovation, we will assess what worked well, what worked less well. So as you can see that we are basically at the very early stages of the project, and the key results are still will be available in an year from now. So we are still in the renovation period. And so today we'll be focusing more on discussing the approach rather than presenting you the results. So a quick overview of the method that we followed. So first we began by reviewing the social challenges, and we also kind of looked at the relevant policies related to renovation and social inclusion. And then based on these analysis, we identified a set of specific dimensions and defined our social inclusion framework. And then we did kind of stakeholder mapping, stakeholder engagement to understand target groups' needs, expectation in relation to these dimensions. And then we formulated these recommendations or blueprints. And eventually, at the last step, we will kind of assess how these recommendations were foreseen in each demo site. So today we will focus mainly on the first 3 steps because we think it's more interesting for today's topic. So just to show you that we have 4 main target groups. So we have the end users, we have internal stakeholders, so basically the project partners, the external stakeholders, and the construction workers that are involved in the process. So the framework is basically designed around these 4 key target groups. I will give you quickly some examples of the key social challenges that are often faced by these target groups. For example, when it comes to end users, a critical barrier is like insufficient information sharing. So when tenants are not aware of potential on-site disruptions that could often lead to delays and dissatisfaction, there could be disagreements between tenants and owners on issues such as rent increases after renovation, and that it can raise fear of evictions. And if we look, for example, at the stakeholders, so often there is lack of coordination, consensus between the actors that can lead to long and complex decision-making processes and can cause delays. And if we look at construction workers, some of the key barriers that have been encountered by them is access to trainings for new renovation technologies. So it makes it difficult for them to stay up to date with the industry advancement. Moreover, there are safety concerns. They also report poor working conditions and low work-life balance. And then we looked also at the policy level. So if we look at topic of social inclusion, European Pillar of Social Rights and SDGs, they are kind of the central mandates, and they are EU's core development strategy across all policy areas, and they kind of reinforces the fundamental social rights. And if we look at the renovation-related policies, for instance, one example is that renovation wave strategy often mentions that one of the critical social barrier is inefficient understanding of energy use and savings among the end users. So this is something that needs to be addressed through such initiatives. Moreover, the Green Deal, it also emphasizes on addressing the issue of affordability, so addressing energy poverty through such initiatives. And such transition should follow a just and inclusive approach. And if we look at NEB, so one of the core value is inclusion. And again, it also emphasizes on the aspect of accessibility, affordability, and moreover, contextualizing such processes with a multi-level participatory and a transdisciplinary approach. So overall, these policies, they have an emphasis, the renovation policies, they have an emphasis on social inclusion. However, there is a varying level of focus. Then, based on these two analyses, we designed our framework, which comprises of 6 key dimensions, as you can see here, and the associated impact areas. So what we would like to achieve by the end of the renovation process across the identified target groups. So for example, one of the dimension is active engagement of end users. So here we would like to improve their participation throughout the process. That could eventually also help in fostering a sense of project ownership, providing them with clear information on new technologies, which can enhance the understanding and also help in developing energy efficient behaviors. And then if we look at in terms of capacity building, this is something quite transversal across the dimensions. So we would like to raise awareness on such approaches which are relevant to the dimension. For example, how to better engage stakeholders, how to better engage end users among all the consortium partners. So raising awareness is kind of a transversal impact area that has been identified for each dimension. Then we also have accessibility and affordability that have been quite emphasized across all the policies. And in Zaragoza, for instance, we have a special focus on improving the accessibility of the demo site. And in terms of affordability, we would like to raise awareness of energy efficiency and related cost savings after the renovation among the end users. Then we also have active stakeholder engagement. So to really have everybody involved in the decision-making processes and to have a clear and a well-defined communication strategy. Then also improving health and safety conditions, making sure they meet the protocols for all the individuals on site. And then lastly, also raising awareness on equal employment opportunities and conditions among the consortium members. So this framework is tailored to the objectives of InCUBE and focuses primarily for the renovation processes. Of course, there can be more dimensions, but in practical terms, what we have done is we have adapted this framework based on the scope of renovation within each demo site. Then moving on to the second topic, so addressing the gender dimension within the project. Again, for this task, we have started working quite recently and we're still in a very preliminary stage. I would like to maybe explain you what our scope is within the project. So our objective is twofold. Firstly, we have to kind of investigate how women perceive their inclusion in the sector across the demo site. And secondly, we have to understand how innovative technology solutions that are being implemented in InCUBE can improve their inclusion in the sector. And one of the key output as part of this work is called Gender Impact Matrix. So basically, it's a tool that we will use through participatory approaches to facilitate the definition and analysis of gender issues by the communities that are more affected by them. So the people working across the 3 demo sites within the sector. And we kind of started with a similar approach that we used for developing the social inclusion framework. So if you first look at gender-related barriers, so here we have identified two main target groups. So first, women as end user and women in the sector. So from the perspective of women as end users in such projects, there are two key barriers, let's say. First one is related to the issue of affordability. So women or women-led household, they face higher energy poverty and difficulty in paying energy bills. And second is related to their low representation in renovation-related decision-making. And if we look at women working in the sector, there persist several multiple challenges when it comes to the entry in the sector. For instance, there could be inappropriate selection criteria, lack of role models, there are still traditional stereotypes, male-dominated network, and so on. And if we look also at the working condition, for example, there are a few challenges like lack of work-life balance, pay gaps. They are more prone to injuries on site because of poorly fitted equipment, which is usually fitted to male body standards, and so on. And if we also kind of look at some of the key statistics, so for instance, in 2018, only 10% of the construction workforce comprised of women, and there was only a slight increase from 9.6%. So there is still a significant underrepresentation, and the change is happening very slowly. On top of that, if you look at the pay gap, so in EU, the women earn on an average 12.7% less per hour than men. And if we zoom particularly on the energy sector, around 80% of the energy workforce is male. However, there is some optimism about the renewable energy sector globally. So a study done by an international renewable energy agency revealed that they make up around 32% of the workforce. So it's quite optimist, but although it's still less than 1/3, and women are better represented in administrative positions, although the number drops again if we look at the technical position or non-STEM positions, so the managerial or high-level positions. Now taking a look at the key policies. So gender equality strategy is one of the main policies that emphasizes on the dual approach of gender mainstreaming and intersectionality. So where personal characteristics like race, ethnicity, religion, etc. are also taken into consideration along with the gender dimension. And this gender equality strategy also emphasizes the role of Green Deal and renovation wave strategy, where it says that these initiatives may affect women and men differently. For example, women experience more energy poverty than men. So it stresses the need to understand the gender impact of such policies on the end users as well from the gender aspects. Moreover, the renovation wave strategy explicitly mentioned that there is a need to increase the role and presence of women in the workforce. And if we look at the EU Green Deal, it does not explicitly mention the gender aspects, although it says that all the actions must follow the principles of European Pillar of Social Rights, where one of the core principles is related to gender equality. And again, NEB highlights improving the representation of women in the sector. So overall, these policies emphasize the urgency to address the gender issues in the sector while also building knowledge of how these gender dynamics intersects with broader social and economic challenges. And based on this, basically, we have identified some key dimensions that will form the gender impact matrix, as you can see here. So these dimensions, basically, they focus on the systemic gender barriers or issues that women encounter throughout their career in the sectors, from education to recruitment to job retention and career advancement. And in this table, basically, it's a summary of all these dimensions. And in the next phases, we will kind of investigate how these issues are perceived by men and women across the 3 democide. And then at a second moment, we will investigate together with the technology providers of InCUBEs that how these solutions can also further improve broader inclusion or address certain gender challenges. And lastly, I would quickly like to share some key lessons. They are although preliminary lessons learned. First one is it is very important to identify and understand the roles of all the key actors that are involved in the renovation process, because that can help in tailoring your approaches to the specific realities of each demo site and the end users that are living there. So it's very important. Then managing diverse expectation, it requires building trust. For example, in case of Zaragoza, where the demo site actors are kind of interacting with 40 families. And we also learned that local actors who understand the community dynamics are key in reaching these communities, as well as in building trust and fostering the engagement. And then again, consistent, transparent, and communication is utmost important. So engaging everyone throughout the process is important for building trust and ensuring that everybody is informed and involved. And more or less, lastly, ongoing feedback is very critical. So it's not enough to communicate. We have to keep the dialogue open throughout the innovation, because they can help us in adapting our approach based on the evolving expectations of the communities. So thank you. That's it for my time. I hope I was within the time limit.
Hi, Rashida. Thank you for your presentation. You're perfectly in time.
Okay.
Sounds very interesting what you're working on. And I also believe that you are interested in the other experts, what they have to say on this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Now, then we will start with the Q&A later on to hear from them. Maybe they have some insights for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you again, Harshita. And then we will go on to the next presentation from Patricia. I will bring her on stage. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll leave the floor up to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Patricia, as you've mentioned, and I'm representing the HumanTech project. And just to give you an idea what the HumanTech project is about, I think it's actually facing a lot of the challenges that are similar that have been brought up by you, Philo, in the InCUBE project. When we are looking at the construction industry today, we can see that we have slow technology adoption in this sector. We have, of course, a lot of dangerous tasks there, so worker safety, but at the same time, keeping up the productivity is an issue. Then what you have also mentioned for InCUBE, and this is of course not specifically for the construction industry, we have a shortage of skilled workers. And of course, among other challenges, we want to be sustainable when we are producing new buildings. And you can see here on the right-hand side, the whole consortia. We are more than 20 partners from all over Europe. And the idea is to use different advanced technologies, which I'll present to you in a minute, to face all these challenges. So what are the main technologies we are looking at? We are mostly looking at interactive robots, exoskeletons, and XR glasses. We are also looking at building information modeling and drones, but I won't focus on those because these are the ones here presented, are the ones which directly interact with construction workers. And when we look at these technologies in relation to how they can promote individualization of a workplace, we can see that there are different possibilities. They can, for example, support individual skills and abilities. They can adapt to individual preferences someone might have. They can also take into consideration individual states, for example, mental states. Or, of course, they can be adapted to individual anthropomorphic features. So there is a number of possibilities how these technologies can promote and support individualization. And of course, if we consider this is a great potential for fostering greater inclusion and being able to include more people into different work sites. But on the other hand, there are a number of risks associated with these type of technologies, because if a technology, for example, an interactive robot, has knowledge about my mental state or has knowledge about my preferences, this means the system collects data. And when I collect data, I automatically have the risk of surveillance. People might feel monitored. And of course, I have a lot of data privacy issues I have to take into consideration. So this is just a brief description of what are the benefits and risks when we're talking about individualization of these new and emerging technologies in the construction industry. Now I would like to point out some of the activities we've been doing within the HumanTech project. And the idea, similar to InCUBE, is that we have different use cases where these technologies are applied. And of course, for us, it's always really important to get the end user feedback. When I'm saying end user feedback, I'm talking about construction workers, so people who would be interacting with this technology on a daily basis. And what we did here together with our partner Technalia and Acciona, we conducted different focus groups or kind of workshops where we presented these different technologies to potential workers who would be working with them. And we also presented the use cases where the HumanTech project had the idea that this technology could be used for. So you can see here, for example, at the picture on the left, that this is a bricklaying task. And the idea is that an interactive robot would hand over a brick to support the worker when building the wall. And in total, we had 75 participants from 3 different locations. 2 of them were in Spain, 1 of them was in Ireland. And one has to say that the Irish sample, this was a training center for construction workers. And what we analyzed among some other concepts, we were especially interested in the expectation regarding specific interaction principles of the technologies. And these interaction principles, they are basically a core design element to address when we're talking about new and emerging technologies. They are also based on an ISO standard, and you can see the 7 principles here. So it's something like suitability for the user task, but also how well I can learn the technology, and also how suitable for individualization the technology is. And we asked the participants what they expect, how well the technologies would support each of the principles. And just to give you an idea of the statistics on this sample, we were able to talk to, and I think this is very interesting because it actually supports what we've heard earlier in the 2 presentations. The sample distribution shows that we have been talking mainly to male participants. Most of them in the 2 Spanish sites, they were older. Of course, the ones in the training center, they were younger, but in the other sites, they were way above the age of 45. Of course, they had more experience when they were older. And another very interesting result that we found is we also asked for their affinity of technology of the workers. And one might have the hypothesis that younger people show higher values for affinity of technology, so that they are more open towards innovative technologies. But we could actually see that the scores in the sample in Limerick, which was the training center sample, they were actually the lowest. So again, that's something we have to consider when we're talking about new and emerging technologies, that the openness towards these kind of technologies, they do differ, and it's not necessarily that it's related to something like age or gender, and we have to be very careful when we look at these things. Just a brief slide on the results regarding the interaction principles we've analyzed. Again, we can see here that on the when we take a look at all the interaction principles as a total, that the sample with the unexperienced and younger participants had lower expectations towards these technologies than compared to the workers who had more experience with construction tasks. And you can see here on the left-hand side, we asked for each technology which principle was the most important one to the end users. And for interactive robots, they said it's controllability, followed by suitability for the task. For exoskeletons, it is suitability for individualization and the ability to be able to learn the functionalities of the exoskeletons. And for XR glasses, it was again learnability and suitability for individualization. And this is some really valuable feedback we have then given back to the technology developers, because this is something the technology developers then, of course, should focus on in the further development of each of these systems. Also, yeah, as a preliminary conclusion, and maybe also to give you an outlook what we are going to do in the next 8 months of HumanTech, what we have gathered so far is that we say design for all is the basis. So despite that we want to create inclusive technologies and target a broader audience, it's very important that we consider some basic interaction principles, especially the principle of supporting the task properly, because if that's not done in a proper way, further elements might not be additional, might not bring additional benefits. And also a finding that we were able to conclude from the results is that individual differences matter. We were able to see that more experienced workers actually have higher expectations toward these type of technologies. So that's something we have to really look out for when we use these type of technologies. And what has also been shown is that suitability for individualization is strongly desired by potential end users. But as I've presented at the beginning, there are some greater risks associated with this principle. And our further actions will include further evaluation of the actual prototypes. And here we will validate the expectations with the actual user experiences, and we are really looking forward to the results we will be able to maintain there. So thank you for your attention, and I hand over to Tony, I believe.
Hi, Patricia. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting to see that you're already further in the research that you've done within HumanTech. I have a quick question for you. What is the most surprising result to you in all the work you've done so far?
Yeah, it's actually, the age and experience gap, so that more experienced people and older workers have higher expectations and see some of the technologies more critical and say, okay, if it's not really supporting my task, it can be nice to individualize. It can be, have some fancy functions, but if it's, for example, so slow that I can't perform my task in the time I need, I'm not going to use it. So they were actually quite critical, and therefore I would say the technology developers have to do their job right. Otherwise, the humans won't, or the workers won't use it. So
the humans can do it better. So there's a high standard for
exactly, because I mean, especially in construction tasks, the manual labor it's so skilled, and people perform so great efforts, even with where we would say it might seem like a simple task like bricklaying, but if you break it down, it's a highly complex task. And to get a robot doing that in an efficient way, it's the human is a very incredible human being. So to have a robot doing it the same speed and in the same precision, it's tough, I would say.
Yeah, it's hard to replicate a human in that sense. But I can understand that these are interesting results and very valuable also for these technology developers. So thank you again, Patricia. We will now go on to the third and final presentation of today's webinar, which is will be given by Tony. Tony, welcome.
Hello.
I think I'll just leave the floor up to you.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, congratulations to my colleagues, because I've been sticking to the time of 15 minutes, even less. I will try to do the same. So I am Tony, and I'm going to introduce to you the key results so far of our gender equality plan for the RoBetArme project, which is a project that has been funded through these breakthrough technologies, supporting technology sovereignty and construction topic. It's a research and innovation action project. You see here the website. We are 19 partners, plus from 12 countries, plus Japan. It's led by Greece, nearly 9 million euros. And the project is 42 months, ending in November next year. So we still have about 14 months to go and to deliver results. Objectives is to bridge the link between the Construction 4.0 and Industry 4.0. So Construction 4.0 is basically automating laborious construction tasks in all phases of the construction, and applying Industry 4.0 technologies such as sensors, augmented reality, high-performance computing, additive manufacturing, autonomous robots, and simulation systems, all those technologies together. And concretely, we plan to develop and design, implement 2 manipulators. We are talking about application of shotcrete, which is spray concrete. So first manipulator is to analyze the surface and find the imperfection of the surface with a robot. And the second element is about applying the shotcrete itself. So I'm just going to show you what it means. On the left side, you've got what is done today, the manual work, hard work, and what is planned to do in the tunnel. So in the tunnel, you see the two robots. One is analyzing the surface, and the other one is applying the shotcrete on the surface. Okay, so it's a lot of technologies involved, and we are still developing those technologies through several pilots in France, in Denmark, in Ireland. So as part of the project gender equality plan, we have these 3 steps we have been implementing. The gender analysis. So here we perform the gender analysis survey to collect info from the partners first. And we gather information. For example, what is the gender balance in the consortium? Then we've got the gender equality plan, which is setting the plan and objective of the project, first generic, and then more specific, adapted to the technologies we are using. And then we also we've got a specific task to link gender with regulation, societal, and ethical activities. We have a gender action team as part of the project, and it's also planned to deliver a paper on gender equality for robotics. So the gender analysis. So we perform an analysis to identify the differences regarding the proposed technologies from different viewpoints, satisfaction from the workers, men, women, preference, and perception. Okay, and this helps us to generate conclusion on the importance of social acceptance of the new technologies by the workers, especially women, both genders. So we perform this survey that provides this analysis in the construction sector. And in all the phases of our survey, We already adopt some gender equality mechanism, like for example, we ensure equal participation between male and female. And we focus also on avoiding to have unbiased information. So we try to be as clear and transparent as possible. Here is a statistics of the project. So you can see already that there is a big difference between researchers and non-researchers in terms of male and female. This is here another representation of the same analysis, the same statistics. So I've got in the project a total workforce of 70% of males and 30% of female, which is, of course, not fair. The survey we did with capturing qualitative, quantitative data and raise the awareness of gender ethic issues all around the project. We asked all the participants of the project to fill out the survey in an anonymously manner. The survey is stored on secure servers with GDPR, and it will be conducted twice. We did it already once at month 15, and we analyzed it. And we will do another one next year, so before the end of the project, and maybe we do some more. So we do another one to measure the effect of the actions and activities we implement as part of the gender activity plan. The results will be available to everyone, not only to the commission and the reviewers, but will be available to the wide community. So here I've got an example here. I don't know if you see it very clearly, but there are 4 different steps. One is about the participant themselves, who they are, which kind of job are they doing, how long have they been working on the construction domain, how long have they been working on the project, what is a former EU project experience, and if they've been working also on projects related to or involving some gender equality balance. And then personal experience of each participant to the survey. Have you ever received intimidation by your speech or action? Have you been feeling some kind of discrimination? Have you not been taken seriously in your work? Did you feel comfortable during your presentation as a woman, and so on? And then more questions related to the project, which is important to have a very clear process to report incidents in terms of, for example, you are a woman, you are suffering discrimination, and so on. So is gender equality properly addressed by your colleagues, coordinator, project partners, work package leaders, task leaders? And do you believe the gender balance is beneficial for a project? And you can comment on anything you want related to this topic. So the survey results, I just show you here the answer for 3 questions. The first answer is, do you have knowledge of how previous EU projects address gender inequality balance? So here, out of 35 answers, 22 are not really happy. So 9 says mention in training review, reporting, end of project survey, but no action taken. There were 9. Also, gender inequality balance not addressed, 6. Gender imbalance noted, but no actions taken, 6. So it's quite significantly demonstrating that we have to do things to cover these issues. About if you have ever been taken seriously in your work, there are about 36 answers. There are 6 of them that are not too happy. For example, males speaking louder over me when I'm talking, or when I make a presentation, I'm not taken seriously because males don't consider my technical background or feedback sufficiently attractive, and they consider opinions from other males better than mine. So not too good as well. Do you have any suggestion on how to improve gender inequalities or gender balance within RoBetArme project? There are a lot of answers here, which are quite interesting. I highlight 2, of course, to have more workshops among the partners, but also not only to consider the gender neutral language in the project, not only male, female, but also to include other gender identities outside the binary spectrum, which I think is perfectly right. When you fill up some polls, sometimes you've got male, female, and non-binary. So why not also addressing this non-binary as part of the of the polls, of the surveys we are making. About the gender equality plan, how we implement it. So we address the SDG 5, Sustainable Development Goal from the European Union, achieve gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. We also address the gender equality strategy that was mentioned before by my colleague. And then we of course address different angles together with the gender dimension, environment, social, technical, financial. We also consider the gender impact assessment, which is also another document that goes beyond the gender analysis. It provides information on the effects of any action you implement for gender equality. And we also consider the guidance on gender responsive standards, because we're also working upon standards as part of the project. Strategy we have to develop this PGEP, which is Project Gender Equality Plan. So we define the requirements. Okay, we address the research and innovation activities from all angles. In all research phases, we try to be as holistic as possible and to be inclusive. And because specifically for the construction and robotic sectors are not so many women, so we try to involve anyone in the survey, anyone in the actions we're taking. And of course, we try our actions to be sustainable in time. Our plan is based on 5 pillars: education and training. So we develop training programs to encourage women to pursue careers in construction, not only in engineering roles, but also in trading roles or commercial roles. Of course, we collaborate with educational institutions to promote construction courses. And the KPI here is to have a 15% increase in women involved in construction courses. Second pillar is about the career development. Here we specifically target how task assignments can be, let's say, more developed for the women. And we've got KPI tutoring programs on the gender balance among construction companies. The third pillar we have is about the workplace environment. So how to have a zero tolerance policy for harassment and discrimination. And we plan to have a KPI of 80% satisfaction of workers on gender discrimination countermeasures. Health and safety, of course, which is very important for construction. Do you have appropriate personal protective equipment, for example, as a construction site? And as part of the pilot, this is what we are going to check out to ensure that the pilots have gender-specific PPE, so personal protective equipment. And finally, the community engagement and outreach. Of course, we've got to disseminate, and we plan to organize 3 community engagement events at the pilot sites to promote the engagement of girls and women in construction jobs. There is also, as part of the project, a focus on 3 particular technologies, because we believe that the inclusion is important for the technology because it accelerates the speed of innovation. So if you've got a diversity of thinking, which basically means also diversity of individuals, then we will get better results at the end. So we focus on 3 main technologies, which are additive manufacturing, human-robot collaboration, and digital twin environment. And for each of these technology, we adopt specific actions, okay, as part of the project. For example, additive manufacturing, which is quite a heavy work, but is mostly done by men because it requires some physical ability. Then, as part of the RoBetArme project, we introduce 3D printing technologies so that females are also involved in these activities. For example, teleoperating the 2 manipulators we have in place. And human-robot collaboration. This is based mainly on the worker acceptance. We just talked about it with Patricia and Philo. So substituting man by robots can be also a dangerous task developed by workers, and we can maybe use robots as well. But we need to think carefully about how those robots can be designed so that the women can also manipulate them in an easy way. So how to embed the gender into the robot. For example, voicing, for example, how to command a robot by voice, by man or by woman. And finally, the digital twin environment, which is another technology we are using. And here we involve user-centric design principles to take into account needs and preferences from both genders. Finally, the last task, I'm going to finish with this, is about linking gender with regulatory, societal, ethical issues. So the issues are always interconnected. For example, regulatory compliance involves also fair treatment to employees. Societal issues encompass gender equality and inclusion. So all these activities, gender, regulatory, societal, ethical, have got to be considered together and require a multidisciplinary approach with a lot of people, different angles, different opinions, different viewpoints. For the genders, for example, in the robotic, it's women are underrepresented in this field. So we plan to have the activities to provide women with the same opportunities and resources, not only in the terms of payment, but also in terms of the equality of job in the position of engineering, in the position of training. Regulatory, societal, ethical, regulatory, if you violate regulations, you can get some fine, so better you fulfill the action in line with the women. Societal, of course, inclusion from all dimensions, men, women. Ethical, then you've got to maintain the moral principles, values in decision making. And finally, our expected results next year, of course, we want to improve the gender equality in our project. We want to get recognition as a project that supports these activities. We want our activities to be sustainable in time, and we want, of course, to have visibility for our project. Sorry, I've been maybe more than 50 minutes. Philo.
Hi, Tony. No, I think you've done a great
I've been
job.
quick.
A lot of results from your project. I think the webinar is being recorded, so I think for those who are interested in having a deeper look at what exactly came out of the surveys, I think they can do so. So afterwards, we will upload this webinar on YouTube. People can pause it. But maybe a question for you, Tony. What is do you think the most important outcome of your research that can make the construction sector more appealing?
I think our 5 pillars are quite interesting, and also to address specific actions depending on the type of technologies. Okay, so additive manufacturing, human-robot collaboration, and digital twin. I think addressing specific issues related to each of those technologies, I think will be a key outcome of the project. Not only to address women equality, gender equality at the project level, but also at technology level inside the project.
So that's very much in line with what Patricia just discussed.
Yes. But she's talking in the skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she was talking about smart glasses, and she was talking about, remember the first one. But she was also talking about 3 technologies. I'm also talking about 3 technologies. So we're very much in line. Yes.
Okay. But that's good to hear that, that everyone working on the same topic, but there's of course different results, but also kind of similar things that come out of these researches. Thank you again. I'd like to ask the other presenters to join us on stage so we can maybe have a brief discussion, because I saw there were a few questions in the chat. But maybe first I'd like to give the floor to the presenters, because Akshita, I believe that during your presentation, you're very much interested in gathering input from either Patricia or Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go. Thank you, all the presenters. It was really interesting to hear from you. I think I have one specific question to Patricia. It's related to the interaction principles that she showed. So I was interested in understanding, were they customized were they selected based on the technologies, or is something that is comes within the universal or design for all approach? Like, how do you approach these principles basically for the technologies?
Yes, so first of all, no, they were not tailored to the specific technologies. I mean, the idea is that they apply to any interactive technologies.
Okay.
So whether it's an interactive robot, exoskeleton, XR glass, they should be basically the core of the design process. How this looks specifically, for example, the possibility for individualization will be something different for an interactive robot compared to an exoskeleton. To an exoskeleton, it's probably more about the anthropomorphic features. So how can I adjust it to my height, my body weight, for example, but maybe also the kind of feedback or the kind of support I get. For a robot, it could be something like which interaction mode I prefer. Do I prefer voice? Do I prefer gesture? So how this specifically is set up, then this depends on the human, the environment, the specific technology, but the principle should always be considered. And this is something, and this is exactly, it also follows the design for all approach, which I would also say, I mean, I think it's really important that we talk about inclusion, that we talk about different genders. But when we are talking about how to interact with the technology, I wouldn't stress that there are too many differences between, for example, male and female. Because if we follow the design for all approach, we have already reached a lot.
Thank you. That's really useful and interesting for us as well. I think this is something that we can also integrate in the next phases of our research when we will try to understand how these technologies can improve broader inclusion, let's say. Yeah, thank you.
That's a very interesting insight, Patricia. So what you're saying is that by developing these new technologies, you could start, let's say, neutral, gender neutral, or so agnostic. That way you don't have to make something that's focused on a certain specific type of user and adjust it so it's more inclusive. By starting neutral, you don't have to.
Definitely, yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is the whole idea of human-centered design, that you actually don't I mean, there are differences, of course, there are differences, but if we design it in the way that, let's say, 90% or 95% of the humans are able to interact with it, then we've already we've already reached a very good goal. And if we take these general principles, then within one principle, we can take it even further. So this is why I chose individualization. This is something where I think where we can push the limits to the furthest and say, okay, for every very specific human individual, we create something unique. But still, if every technology follows these 7 principles, it's already really good, and we don't have to. We already, as you say, we start neutral.
Yeah. So the main thing all these things have in common is the human aspect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Harshita. I hope that answered your main question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe it's nice to also have a look at some of the questions that were asked in the chat, because you see that someone asked, Shubha asked, what are some actions that construction companies can take to increase diversity in their workplace? So do you have any tips, tops that a construction company can do tomorrow, let's say, to increase diversity? It's a general question.
Yeah, I think I can take it, but I think it has to be a very conscious change at the organizational level. So you have to really look or review your policies, the hiring policies, to make sure that you don't have any biases in the process. And some organizations even have, for instance, diversity goals, or they also use specific tools, for example, gender equality plan and so on. And a key barrier often is a lack of awareness or resources to implement these inclusive or diverse policies. So I think starting from training the managers or the HR people on such inclusive policies, like what could be useful, like having flexible work arrangements, catering to the needs of people with disabilities, enforcing zero tolerance policies, and so on. So I think it's also good to start training people on these aspects, and also to kind of consciously see what are the biases within the organization, and how the value of how diversity within a workplace can improve efficiency. So I think it's a change that is required at organizational level.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone that wants to add to that? No? Because I think it also reflects to one of the other questions that was asked by Samantha, is about the largest barriers in a wider spread adoption of gender inclusive practices by construction companies. Because could it be, for instance, that the topic construction is just not of interest, or there's not the pool for instance, women that are interested in this sector is just not large enough? Is there anyone that can maybe answer that question?
Yeah, try.
You can try.
This is when we think about construction, we think about male, with the helmet and machines. Okay, big machines. Think about Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall movie. Okay, and technologies today allows to get involved in the field. So I don't think there is a kind of barrier for women to access this construction domain. All these Industry 4.0 technologies are used for reaching any kind of sectors that include construction. So I think the way technology works today, and the way we have got to train women and training courses and so on technologies, I think they can be the way to have more job in this domain, not only, as I said before, not only in engineering, but also in trading at all levels of the position in the construction company. So yeah, for me, the key is the technology, adoption of the technology.
So maybe I can add here. I mean, I think you're right. It's the new and emerging technologies can for sure, for example, support especially physical tasks where we might see a difference between male and female, for example, in strength. That we could have some systems which support, for example, heavy lifting. But again, then the technologies have to have a readiness level that is really already really high. And currently, the technology readiness level of most technologies is very low. So therefore, again, no matter whether female, male, or any other gender, if it's not working because the technology is not yet that developed, it's not going to help anyone. And I believe that also one important point is the area of education, and so schooling, but also education after school. So craftsmanship, apprentices. At this level, you have to create awareness. You have to point out the benefits of the industry. And then I think this is also a connection point where you have access to new persons, and then you can attract more people.
Thank you, Patricia, for that addition. Do you think that in the beginning I discussed the thing that changing industry perspective? Do you think that technology will eventually change that perception of the industry, that it's only for a certain type of person, human?
Maybe I can answer this. I mean, it's possible, but for example, what we have seen in the slides I've presented, we saw that there was a young sample of young men. They were not very open towards new technologies. So one might think that young people are attracted, and this could be. I mean, again, I wouldn't, put my finger on say it's that there is that you can say it's women are like this, men are like this. Some are more open towards technology than others. I believe that there are other factors which influence this other than age or gender. It's more about the upbringing, the environment you grow up with, how often you have had contact with these technologies. So I think it's more about these factors rather than saying it's all about gender or age.
Okay, thank you. And maybe I'd like to finalize this discussion with the last question which was asked. And I find it kind of an interesting one because we've been talking about different technologies, robots, like even suits that you could wear. Sounds very futuristic. Did you also experience, this is a question to all of you, any workers who are maybe afraid of being replaced by these types of technologies? Like robots are taking over.
I'm in favor of thinking that where there are problems, you need technology, and the technology is not going to replace the work. There will be always a work in the loop. So, in addition to make the final decision, because as Patricia said, TRL are low. So you need someone to validate the final solution. So, and this is human. So I think workers don't have to be scared about losing their job. I don't think this will happen. Okay. And in any case, because there will always be problems, there will be always need of technology and always need of workers as well. So I don't think engineering technology is going to destroy jobs. I don't believe that.
Thank you, Tony. Patricia, you want to add something?
I would just like to support that, what Tony said. I mean, what we have learned so far, not only in the HumanTech project, but also in other projects is, I mean, yes, if you start talking to workers, one initial reaction might be, oh, is my job still safe? But then when you dig in deeper, they are very aware of, for example, how many so-called 3D jobs they are doing. So the dull, dangerous, and dirty ones. And that this is not something you like to do all the time. And you are quite happy, actually, if there are some tasks where you say, okay, this task can be supported by, for example, a robot. I don't have to climb into a small vessel anymore, for example, or climb up very high where it's very dangerous. So I think if you use it for the right tasks, then there is not actually the fear, but workers are actually happy that they get supported in a good way.
So it's a positive thing. That's, I think, a nice one to close this webinar with. Ashita, you wanted to add something? Or
No, I'm good. Like I share the same sentiments. So yeah, well,
perfect. Okay, then we end this webinar on a positive note. I'd like to thank all the speakers for your contribution to this discussion, and also to the webinar itself. As I said, the webinar is recorded, so if you have any colleagues who couldn't make it today but are still interested in the results from these projects, we will publish it on the internet later on. And for those who are interested in more of what we are doing as RoBetArme, InCUBE, and HumanTech, we are part of the Tech for EU cluster. which is shown on the screen here. And there are some other EU projects who are part of this cluster. So we all work on construction and renovation in Europe and all innovations that are needed to speed up this process. Once again, thank you all, and I wish I see you again sometime.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.